Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda. I'm just going to give an overview of the UASI program and then walk you through the proposal process and the application forms. We're going to do a web grants demonstration, and then we'll wrap up. Sorry, the agenda's a little. We're going to wrap up with what happens after applications are submitted, and then we'll hopefully have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to ask that folks hold their questions until the end in case your question is answered by the time we get there, and then you know, we'll answer as many as we can. So, how many folks in here are familiar with UASI? Anybody where it's like a brand new? Okay, so this is FEMA's definition of the UASI initiative, and there are about 64 high threat, high density urban areas across the nation that have UASIs, and this is basically the overarching goal of the whole UASI program. So as proposals are being developed, keep this in mind. So the Bay Area UASI, probably most of you in the room are familiar with the Bay Area UASI, but it's made up of 12 operational areas or counties and 3 major cities, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. The counties have been divvied up into 4 hubs. There's the North Bay Hub, the South Bay Hub, the East Bay Hub, and the West Bay Hub. So if you don't see your county on this map, you don't need to be at this meeting. So if you do see the county, you're in good shape. So next slide. So this is what everybody has been waiting to see, I'm guessing. These are the fiscal year 24 and 25 estimated funding allocations. I say estimated because there's a lot of factors that go into the final amounts that, like for example, the last 2 years we've received about $500,000 less in funding than we had been. There's just quite a few factors, and there's a formula that determines these allocations. But on the left side, I want to make sure this is clear, that is the cumulative amount of money available to each hub for both fiscal year 24 and 25. So on the right, you'll see what it is per year. But I wanted you to have a sense of what those numbers look like. I also want to make sure everybody's aware that the core cities all receive $1 million per year in addition to the amounts you see here. Any questions about this right now? Okay, just. That's up to the hub to decide how they're going to distribute it. Sorry, I asked everybody to hold questions, and then I asked if you had questions. So is it an urgent, pressing question? Okay. So then let's move on. Okay. So the timeline, let's take a look at that for the process. So we have our kickoff meeting today, and tomorrow morning, the portal will open for you to submit your grant applications through web grants. The portal will be open for a 3-week period, so it's going to close on Friday, October 6th. At that point, the Bay Area UASI management team reviews all of the applications that we receive for about a 3-week period as well. After that, the approval authority reviews the projects, and by mid-December, the hub voting members will have the projects in front of them and will meet in January to prioritize which items should be funded. So just so you guys know, I think usually we get about twice as many applications as we're able to fund. So those hub prioritization meetings answer a lot of questions about which projects will be selected for fiscal year 24, as well as which ones will be selected for 25. Okay, so when developing your project, here's some like general guidelines for you. I am happy to report that I'm not going to request a 20-page proposal narrative from you. You can come up with a project, summarize it in 2 or 3 sentences. If you can answer these questions that are listed here, you should be in great shape for being able to submit an application. So who does the project benefit? You got to be clear about which jurisdiction or department is going to be benefiting from the project. Then you'll also have to be able to articulate what the project is going to entail in terms of milestones. You're going to have to know when you're going to be working on this project and which jurisdictions the project serve, because every project has to serve at least 2 jurisdictions. And then just, making sure it's clear why the project is needed. Next slide. So the application forms there's 6 different, basically, areas of the application. There's just general information. We'll go through each of these in detail in a minute. The project description areas, probably the more labor-intensive area of the application. The compliance section should be fairly easy for you folks to figure out. You have to identify 5 milestones for each project. Then there's an equipment page that's obviously not relevant if you're not purchasing equipment, but if you are, there's a separate page for that. And then there's the budget that needs to be submitted. So let's go through each of these one by one so you can have a better sense. So the first thing you have to do is give your project a title. I don't want to see any titles that say like Marin UASI grant or, fiscal year 25 project. Be descriptive, please. And then you'll have to identify who your project lead is, and it should be the person who's actually completing the application. You should make sure that your department leadership is on board with your plans and that they've approved what you're going to submit. And then, look, we're already checking one box off since you guys are here today, but you have to have either come here to this meeting or listen to the meeting or the recording that we'll be posting on our website. So I want to make sure we spend just a minute talking about this last bullet. It's really important that your project supplements your general funds and your existing funds, and that it does not supplant things that have already been budgeted for. That's a very, very important rule for federal dollars. So next slide. Okay, so the project description area has 3 components. There's a nexus to terrorism, the homeland security goal areas, and the core capabilities. So let's first talk about the nexus to terrorism. And by that, we mean to prevent, protect, mitigate, respond, or recover from an event. You'll have to describe your project. I don't know if it's big enough to read, but the project says this 2024 project will install fencing, lighting, and gates around the Alameda County water treatment plant. That's like one example. Feel free to, include more information than that, but 4 or 5 sentences is plenty. And then you'll have to choose which of those areas your project falls under in terms of selecting the nexus to terrorism. And you'll have to be able to speak to that as well. Like, how is it connected to terrorism prevention or response or recovery? So I think we can move to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about the Homeland Security goal areas. These are established by the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. These are called national priority areas, and it's a little confusing, the reason why it says goals 1 to 5 and then a comma 11, but there are 11 Homeland Security goal areas total. The ones you see right here reflect what they have deemed national priority areas, and 30% of the entire grant award goes to these projects. But you guys can kind of not pay attention to this slide because almost all of you won't be applying under any of these areas. Then NICRIC will probably be applying under information sharing, but if you have projects in mind in these areas, reach out to the work group and we can help connect you if you need help. But and they can talk to you about some options. But let's go to the next slide. So these 5 goals are going to be where the vast majority of you will be submitting your projects. You can go ahead and just read through them if you want, but the idea is that you choose the one that best aligns with your project's objective, and based on which one you choose, it'll inform later drop-down menus that you have to choose from. So definitely put some thought into this. There's a guide that we put together called the Proposal Guidance document, and that's a really helpful guide. It's posted on our website. We brought a few copies with us, but we don't have enough for everyone. But you should 100% spend some time reading through that document and pay attention, especially to Appendix B, because that's going to help you understand the goals and some of the core capabilities, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so core capabilities. As you guys know, the whole point of these grants is to help close these capability gaps. So there are 32 core capabilities listed that are established by FEMA, and you're going to have to choose the one that makes the most sense for your project. You're also going to have to describe a little bit how your project will close the gap. And again, Appendix B is going to be your go-to area for guidance and learning more about core capabilities and how you know which one to choose and things like that. So the project proposal guidance document is currently posted on our website, but we'll add it also to the application area so that it's with all the other materials so you can easily find it. Next slide. Okay, so compliance. You do have to answer a couple questions about whether or not you're going to need to complete the EHP form, a sole source request form, an aviation request form, and a watercraft request form. I'm not going to go into what each of these forms entail, but if you're applying, you should go to our website and click on each of those forms and look through them and make sure that you're going to be positioned to answer them. The sole source approval is required for any projects with a cost of over $250,000. Otherwise, you can follow your jurisdiction regulations. And performance bonds are also required if you're purchasing anything over $250,000. So, next slide. Oh, there that is. Thanks. Okay, so I want to take a minute to talk about solution areas because they relate a lot. I mean, they guide the milestones that you're going to develop for your project. So, POETI, planning, organization, equipment, training, and exercise. How many of you are familiar with the POETI acronym? Okay, not a few. Okay, so all of your projects have to fit under one, you have to choose one solution area. So planning is the first area. And the sample objectives or the sample milestones we have listed there are just examples of what you might consider. Planning can be well, I'll go into planning a little bit later when we're talking about the budget. Organization is generally for staffing positions at your jurisdiction. You also have to set up your milestones. They should all fall under the organization category. Same with equipment. You can't cross the POETI lines. The equipment, if you're purchasing equipment, then you have to lay out all your milestones in the equipment area. So training and exercise is crossed out and faded, not for any reason other than those areas those solution areas are managed by the Bay Area Training and Exercise Program. So if you have training or exercise needs, you should reach out to Corinne Bartshire, who leads the BATEP program, and she can work with you to make sure that you get access to the training and exercises you're looking for. So please plan enough time to figure out which categories you fall under, which drop-down lists you have to complete. Don't just log in the day that they're due and think that it'll be something you can do. It takes a little time and a lot of thought. So just make sure that you give yourself enough time so that you don't shortchange yourself in any way. Next slide. Okay. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with these milestones based on what I just said? This is for a planning project. Right. So we never want to see it differ. The solution area has to remain consistent. But that's, the example of the types of milestone. We're not asking you to write really complicated things, just to have thought through how you're going to actually implement it within the time frame of the grant and under budget, within the budget. I mentioned that there's a special equipment page for projects that are going to be purchasing equipment. The first thing you should do if this applies to you is check out the FEMA authorized equipment list online. It's really well organized and there's hundreds of choices to choose from in terms of finding an equipment category that matches what you're looking for. So once you're in, don't wait till you're in the Web Grants program to look through the list because it's more confusing in Web Grants. You'll see the 04 in this example correlates to the 4th category in the AEL dropdown list, but you'll be able to, if you find it on the online first and then go in to Web Grants to select it, that'll make your life easier. But you'll see at the bottom it tabulates how many, items you're going to purchase and what the price is. So it's a pretty quick form to complete. Next slide. Oh, I meant to say on the equipment, if you aren't purchasing equipment, just choose mark it as complete and go to the next section. It's okay that it'll be empty. Okay, so let's talk about the budget a little bit. Again, you'll see the POETI at the top for planning, organization, equipment, and training and exercise. So planning is often used to pay for personnel or other community preparedness and emergency and management activities, like revising your THIRA or SPR or your COOP, anything kind of related to planning. If you are going to submit positions, each one has to be its own project. So if you want to use money to hire 2 people, you would have to submit 2 projects. And again, each position has to have deliverables that tie back to those 11 Homeland Security goal areas. The positions will be limited to 14 months for each grant year. And that's because it takes basically an entire year for the bureaucracy to process the grant. So we, for example, for a fiscal year 24 project, we won't hear from them about whether we've been funded until almost a year from now. So that is usually October-ish. So oftentimes you can get to the 14 months by counting November, December, and then the whole next calendar year. Okay, next slide. So if you're going to submit an organization project, it can be a little confusing because you can also use organization dollars to hire or to pay for positions that you want, but these are typically for positions within your jurisdiction agencies. So you couldn't use organization money to contract out with some vendor or anything like that. You would have to use it only on your own internal hiring. But you can use it for like managing projects, for administrative support or operational support. They really emphasize whole community partnerships these days. And so if you have a project that's focused on that and you want to hire somebody to lead it, that would, be great. There's information sharing is another area. So any ways that you can enhance information sharing between public and private sector, that would fall under this area. And then salaries and benefits for intelligence analysts. So these are just some examples. Again, Appendix B will help you better understand some of these areas. Okay, next slide. So here's some tips basically about completing the equipment budget. So you have to complete that first equipment form that we discussed a few minutes ago, and then you also have to complete an equipment budget. So it's important to remember the shipping and taxes. People always forget it, and it can mean that like you can't actually buy what you intended to purchase with your grant award. So please don't forget that. And then I mentioned earlier that performance bonds are required for any equipment that's over $250,000, but they're also required for vehicles, watercraft, and aircraft. The sole source approval is required for anything over $250,000 as well. portable equipment is not something that has to require compliance approval, but if you're getting the equipment installed, it does. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. Single large equipment cannot be split into 2 grant performance periods. So if you want to buy, you know, a $500,000 new piece of equipment, you can't ask for part of the money in fiscal year 24 and the rest of the money in fiscal year 25. It's all got to fall under one grant year. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to talk quickly about training and exercise since they are part of the POETI budget, but as I mentioned, all the training and exercises are managed by Corinne's team at BATEP. So if you know that like you want everybody at your agency to get trained on a specific class, or you want to plan an exercise, you should definitely go to the BATEP website, see what's available, and then reach out to Corinne. The training and exercise work group meetings happen pretty regularly, so you can also attend that if you're not already attending them. I don't know, Corinne, if you have anything else you want to say to this, but.
I think just really quickly we are going. Thank you, Leo. Just really quickly, we are going through the process of prioritizing training requests for 2024 and the upcoming years. Right now, September 21st is our virtual Integrated Preparedness Plan workshop for BATEP. So we'll be reviewing the training course list and our multi-year training plan on September 21st, 10 a.m. It's virtual. So if you want an invite to that, let me know. We can make sure to get you the link. And then we will also be having a conversation about exercises that are desired throughout the region over the next 3 years and doing some long-term planning for training and exercises. And then, of course, if there are any one-off, hey, we really need this course, or hey, we want to do this smallish tabletop exercise in our jurisdiction, just let us know those requests that you have, and we will manage all those through BATEP. So you don't need to put those requests in this process.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. So here's your basic checklist to know whether or not you're ready to submit your project. So if you can check all these boxes, you're good to go. First of all, you got to be a local government agency within the footprint of the Bay Area UASI. You have to have approval from your department head and leadership. You have to have a designated project lead, and you have to make sure you adhere to the proposal guidance. The nexus to terrorism is important. You have to, give some thought to that. And like I said, you have to choose from those 11 Homeland Security goal areas. Make sure your project benefits at least 2 operational areas. And there's Appendix C of the proposal guidance document that outlines all the allowable expenses under the UASI grant, so that might be something you want to reference as well. But once you have pretty much completed the information that we have just covered, all you have to do is click submit. Please remember to click submit. A lot of times people have it marked as completed and they think that's sufficient if each page is marked as completed, but you still have to hit the submit button for us to receive it. So definitely want to mention that. Yeah, so you've heard me mention a few times this project proposal guidance. I think we brought about 12 copies, and so if anybody wants to grab one on their way out, you should feel free to do that. But definitely visit our website under the proposals area, and you'll find it there as well. The main part of the document really goes over roles and responsibilities and just the overall process, whereas Appendix B provides a lot more detailed information about some of those core capabilities and capability gaps that you may be unsure about. You can learn more about the hub voting process and the approval authority and these work groups I've mentioned in the main document. So let's go to the next slide. I'm torn. I think actually, Leo, I'm gonna skip ahead and we'll come back and have you do the demonstration at the end. Okay, so you've submitted your application. The portal is closed. Let's review really quickly what is going to happen then. So the management team at the Bay Area UASI will finish reviewing applications for compliance and fit and things like make sure you followed the instructions by November 3rd, and then the approval authority will have reviewed the documents by the 22nd, right before Thanksgiving. The December 11th date is what we've set for the hub voting members to finish reviewing their documents. And then, you know, the holidays are going to come, and sometime in January, we'll be reaching out to the hub voting members relatively soon to pick a date. But sometime in January, there will be these prioritization meetings that happen where the hub voting members kind of prioritize and figure out how they want the money to be spent in their hub. The approval authority will, I guess, formally approve our plan with the selected projects in June. And then we wait and wait and wait until we get an award letter from Cal OES, which we hope would come in October 2024. But in the meantime, we are working on, you can go to the next slide, we're working on MOUs for you guys so that as soon as we get notification about the award, we can send out the MOUs and we can get them signed. You'll be receiving, if you apply for both 2024 and 2025 and your project is selected, you'll receive two MOU for each year. And I think that's about all I wanted to say. You can start preparing, like I especially want to encourage you looking into some of the compliance related requirements, but you cannot spend any money until you have a fully executed copy of the MOU. I repeat, do not make any orders or spend any money until you have that signed copy of the MOU. And hold on, before we get to Q&A, Leo is gonna give you a demonstration of the Web Grants portal. For those of you who have used Web Grants before,